Welcome. My name is Amanda Whitton, and here we have,
Adrianna, Rochester.
and we are currently Masters of Social Work students at Sacred Heart University. And in the pursuit of getting our master's degree, we have had some very stimulating conversations about issues in the social work field. And we came across this topic, which is the ASWB licensing exam, and particularly the National Association of Social Work's stance on it. So, we're going to get into today kind of what the exam is, what's required, what we need to do to prepare, and kind of what the social work field has to say about it. So,
Yes.
Adriana, you want to take the lead?
Yes. So the AWSB exam is a 4-hour computer-based exam. It has about 170 multiple choice questions. And essentially, the exam is designed to test future social workers' knowledge on skills needed to practice in the field, especially on the clinical level. So the exam covers topics like human development, diversity in human behavior, and the environment, assessment, diagnostics, and treatment plans, psychotherapy, clinical intervention, case management, and other things. Most of us probably are familiar with these terms because we've studied them in our classes. So literally everything we spent all our master's time studying for is covered in the exam.
Right. I kind of come from a bit of a legal background. So I say it's kind of like our equivalent of what the bar exam is for lawyers. You can get your
Yeah.
master's and you don't have to take these exams, but then you are kind of limited and you can't do a lot of these clinical jobs that I know a lot of us are really aiming to get. So, it's not
Right.
completely mandatory for a social worker, but it's important.
Right. And as you said, the first step is to have a social work degree from an accredited program. But before you even apply to take the exam, you have to get 2 years experience of supervised clinical work and then you can apply based on your state's jurisdiction. And some places don't require this, but some may require you to have recommendation letters, verification that you have completed these hours before licensing exam. So it all depends. I believe the website also has different states that you can look up to see exactly what the requirement is, as well as your state's, governmental websites has those requirements as well.
Right. And I think another important distinction to make too is you said 2 years, but that's if you're doing it full time, 40 hours a week. And it can
Yeah.
be difficult because you have to be under somebody's license. So it's kind of contingent on the job market. And, a lot of people have things in their personal lives. A lot of master's students are getting ready to start having families of their own or
Mhm.
relocations. And so they advertise it as 2 years, and that's great, but 3,000 hours could be a long time. So
Yeah.
it's no joke to get ready for this exam.
Right. It definitely takes a lot of not just determination, but just focus. And you have to make sacrifices. I mean, I'm sure as other people have experienced, just getting your master's degree required a lot of sacrifices and making adjustments. So I can only assume doing the hours before taking the exam requires more.
Exactly. And it's finding a job because I know just basically in my kind of just searches at this point, a lot of people want an LCSW, and it kind of gets to the point of, well, how do I get experience, without having it? And that's kind of a tough thing that I think a lot of us are kind of in the same boat with. And I think what's
Yeah.
important too that I actually found out was not all states have reciprocity. So if you move,
Okay.
there's a possibility that you could do this exam and think you're done, but if you for some reason you have to move from one state to another,
You
that could
do
be
it.
problematic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because
it's
every state is different. The
right.
requirements are different. So for anyone, just piggybacking off what you said, if someone is considering leaving, say, Connecticut for Maryland, they would have to really do their research to see what they need to do prior to looking for work to make sure they're in good standing.
Exactly. And I mean, I do believe that more states are becoming, reciprocal with each other, which is
Mhm.
great. But the fact that it's not just the standard system at this point, I think just really already, we haven't even really gotten into it yet, but just kind of shows how problematic and kind of broken this exam system is, and that
Mm.
it kind of doesn't really set you up for success as a social worker in a field that's so important, in a field where people are overworked and there's less people going into it. And when I started really reviewing for this podcast, like, I am seeing why.
Yeah, I see exactly why too. And the thing about this is a field that needs people. And if we are going to help other people be the best versions of themselves in their lives, then we need a system that helps us be the best professionals in our own standing to do what we need to do.
Exactly. And not even just the exam itself, but I'd like to kind of talk about what you need to do to prepare for it. In addition to doing these 3,000 hours, you also have to study for this exam. And it's not
Yeah.
just taking it. So, interestingly enough, I found that the NASW, who has come out against the exam, they have their own prep course for taking it, despite
Oh,
releasing this article. So,
okay.
they offer what I found 2-day exam prep courses. And the cost for this is $350 per course plus shipping and handling, or $210 for a 1-day course.
Mhm.
Then after that, they also expect that you should be doing these 2-hour prep courses at $68 a session. That's a lot of money.
That is, and that's just to prepare for the exam.
Exactly. And I did some more research because I was wondering if it was just an outlier in costs.
Mhm.
And that's not really what I found. I found another website that it's called the Social Work Examination Services. And they claim that 92% of students that use their materials pass the exam with high
Mhm.
average scores, including the average score of 84 with scores exceeding 90, which they said was uncommon for them. And I had to do some research into this, and it took me kind of a while to find it. And in 2023, I found that the overall pass rate for masters, that's the LM, is 58.2%.
Wow. Okay.
So, but 92% of their students pass.
Okay.
So,
So
what that says to
although
me is you need to prepare
yeah,
with
I was
the
gonna say that
course.
although it costs a lot of money, the preparation pays off.
Right. But that's a lot of money. We're
Yeah.
talking $400, $500 just to
Mm.
prepare for it. And this is a 2-day course, and that doesn't include all the other materials that are needed. And it's a lot of money. And from what I've found, yeah, you really do need something. It's not just something you can study for independently.
Right. It's not like kind of the SATs, for example. You can study independently for that as long as you have the course book for this. Besides the hours you need to clock in for experience, you're coming out of pocket hundreds. And by then we're already in debt for our degree.
Exactly. And the Therapist Development Center, they offer a prep course, which is one of the cheaper ones I found. It was $295. And they recommend studying between 2 and 12 weeks for
Mm.
this exam, or 57 hours of study time. But I don't know anyone with a full-time job or even a part-time job with a family that can reasonably do this in 2 weeks.
Right. No, for at least just for me, for my lifestyle, that is a lot.
Exactly. And I think you and
It's
I
a
have
lot.
a interesting kind of comparison here. I mean, our family lives are different, but I don't have children and I know that you do. And I still can't picture myself in the roles
Yeah.
that I have now doing it. So I can't even imagine what it must be like, and even the stress that it's going to probably put you under as a mother.
Yeah. I mean, to do this, I would have to take time away from just my kids' activities or extracurricular activities to focus on this. And I know a lot of people, at least for me myself, I have a good support system, but we have to manage their time as well. So it's a lot of navigating, a lot of money. And I understand and I see how preparing and putting your time into this course will help with your pass rate. But then again, at what additional costs? So I
Exactly. And
wonder if
this is the
there's a
time.
more affordable or time management wise that can do better.
Right. And this is the time you want to be with your kids. You want to be going to activities, and you don't want to
Yeah.
look back on this time and just remember how much time you had to spend to study for this one exam and how much money that you had to stress over that could have been going towards other activities. And that
Right.
doesn't even include the cost of the exam.
Oh, speaking of the cost of exam, let's get into that.
Oh gosh, I don't know if I want to.
So I found that there are two different fees. So if you're registering as an associate's, bachelor's, or a person with a master's degree, the cost of the exam is $230. If you're registering as an advanced generalist or clinical, so somebody who already had it but has to do it again, it's $260.
Wow.
And now the thing about this is, let's say an individual fails the first time and they're able to go and retake it, it's
Mhm.
additional $230. There isn't a discount or a credit or anything of that nature. You're paying this multiple times until you pass.
Wow.
And this also doesn't include the background checks and the fingerprint fees that each state would require. And let's just say, like, for example, like in Connecticut, a background checks could be about 80-ish, close to $100, and that will cover the FBI background check and the processing fee. Whereas fingerprints could be as cheap as $15. But that
Right.
also could be more depending on the fees that the police stations charge. So you
Exactly.
can
And
spend as low
once
as
you get a
15
job
for
after
50.
too. Mhm.
Exactly.
They could have their own requirements.
Exactly.
And, just based on the statistics that I found, about 72% pass on the first time. So that's a lot of that's, 25 people or 26 people that are gonna have to pay hundreds
Yes.
of dollars.
Exactly. So by the time you pay everything for the preparation of the exam and pay to take the exam, you could be in the hole close to 1,000 or maybe even more, depending on how many times you have to take it.
Right? It's it is truly astronomical that we're expecting to pay around $1,000. That doesn't include anywhere near what we paid for our masters, which I know we both have paid a lot more than that
Yeah,
to get here.
yeah. So it's just another obstacle before you can really do what any individual dreams of doing in the social work field.
Exactly. It really is, something to consider
Mm.
when, and it breaks my heart to think that some people could be discouraged to join this field because I know that this is what I was meant to do. But it did require quite a bit of thought of if my lifestyle, if this was something we could handle. And it really does worry me that some people may be discouraged from this field because of that.
Yes, and even still, like I've spoken with a couple social workers who were due to renew their license, and they felt anxiety of having to make sure they met the deadlines, because if they don't meet the deadlines, they have to do the exam again and pay this extra fee all over after working so hard to pass it. So I can
Exactly.
see how, future professionals and current professionals have a level of anxiety towards this.
So speaking of people passing it, Adriana, did you say that you had some information about who is passing this exam?
Yeah, and actually the information that I found was based from the ASWB.
Oh,
In
so right from the source.
2022, yep, in 2022, they revealed that there was substantial differences in pass rates across racial groups. They reported that Black test takers having a significantly lower first-time pass rate compared to their white counterparts. About 45% of Black first-time test takers passed the exam, compared to 83.9% of white first-time test takers.
Wow.
And I think that's where the root or core of this problem comes in. That even though you and I, for example, could spend the same amount of time and money and energy preparing for it, but we won't have the same odds at passing.
And it's disturbing. And
Mhm.
something very disturbing to me was in my research for this, I was trying to find statistics on, test taking with prep courses and passing it.
Yeah.
And I did, I threw out a lot of statistics at you for this conversation. None of them included race. So I would be very interested to know what the composition of people who are taking these prep courses are, because as we know, people that are white are more likely to be taking prep courses typically, and we can see just based on the pass rates alone. And as social workers, we have to take real problem with that. And we're not the only ones that notice. It's not just you and me here. The National
Mhm.
Association of Social Workers, they came out and spoke against this. I mean, I do take it with a bit of a grain of salt, as they are providing their own prep courses. So, they are getting some financial gain from this, but they did speak out against it. It's just something I think I should bring up. But
Yeah.
the National Association of Social Workers, that's what governs us. It sets our ethical standards, our code of ethics is how we're supposed to practice. And I want to discuss more about that, but they've come out against these exams because of the inherent racism of it. And in 2023, the article that we've kind of been talking about showed significant disparities in pass rates for people of color, older adults, and people where English is their second language. And they came out saying that they were willing to work with the Council of State Governments to improve legislation, including removing provisions which codify the exam. And initially, they wanted to target removal of non-independent social work practice exams, which may be biased and support efforts to strengthen competency measures. So which to me was a bit confusing, but they are working towards trying to come up with, if not getting rid of the exam altogether, a way to make it less racist.
Right. And I mean, with AI being so prominent in everything, I'm sure that also plays a factor into what information gets to whom and how that may play a role in just preparation and taking the course in general.
Oh, absolutely. And I think what's important to note too is it's not just the National Association. There's been plenty of state chapters that have called for the same removal. And one that I found very interesting was North Dakota. And I found that it was written very well. So I'm actually going to read a direct quote from them. And it said that the continued use of the current ASWB exams to measure social work competency runs counter to the mission, values, and ethics of the social work profession.
Mm,
And it's true.
quite
And
cool.
we're going to get into the code of ethics a little bit more. But I think another thing to point out about a state like North Dakota is the pass rate for Native Americans were 69.6,
Mhm.
64.3 for Hispanic and Latinos, and 57.1 for Black test takers. Any guess for the white test takers?
Definitely higher. I would have to take my guess. Probably in the 80s, 90s.
90%.
Mm,
90%. And so I just don't understand how someone can look at that and still argue that this exam is not.
right. I mean, with those numbers you stated and the ones I stated earlier, there is major, like really large disparities and gaps. And
Exactly.
the thing is, we need in order to really service everybody, it has to be very diverse. People can relate to one another in different ways, and by being able to see someone who looks like you, comes from the same background or tradition, or even state as you, can make a significant difference.
Exactly. And it's not just like that you've found one set of statistics or I've found one set. We've thrown out quite a few today, which have probably been
Yeah.
a little bit hard to follow, but they're all kind of following. If we made a chart, they'd all probably be pretty close together.
Yes, there
With
would be a trend, and the racial disparities would be the telling trend of it all, for sure.
Exactly. Exactly. It's been interesting that we've each used independent sources and have come up with similar numbers to show, I think as we know with taking research classes, that in order for us to be able to comfortably and confidently come out with statistical information, we need the evidence to back it up. So to have
Yeah.
all these different sources that are independent of each other come up with similar statistics is pretty alarming.
Yeah, I have to agree with that one for sure. And it worries me with the way, the economy is, and how the future of the profession will eventually look. And if it will
Particularly with this climate,
going
with this
against,
political climate.
yeah, and if at some point it'll end up going against what it morally and ethically is supposed to stand for.
I agree. And we're not the only ones that feel that way. And I think one of the things that our program has been great about is kind of teaching us these connections
Yeah.
with the code of ethics, who was, as we know, created by the NASW, who kind of inspired this podcast for us. And basically what we are doing right now, like you and I sitting here, I think it would adhere to the principle of service. Basically, we're supposed to draw on our knowledge and skills and values to help people in need and to address social problems. We're doing the research right now on what information is out there, and we're working to share it. And I
Yeah.
hope we make a difference with that.
Yeah, I hope so too, because this is stuff that I'm sure you can probably speak to it that we didn't know prior. At least I didn't know prior to it. And being able to do the research, gain the knowledge, and share, and in our way, as well as advocating for future professionals, it can help us all kind of just become more aware, learn how to navigate which type of exam we need to take, how to take it so that we have the best chance at passing it on the first try, and just going in knowing, unfortunately, that the odds right now is against some demographics of people, but there are others in higher places of power who are working to rectify this problem. And for me, I kind of take slight comfort in knowing that, not just saying, okay, there is a big problem with the exam, there are a lot of racial gaps and disparities in between test takers. Cool, you said what the problem is, but what are we going to do to address it? And knowing that the association is working actively to address it, I can take some comfort in knowing that there might be some change that will benefit everybody, regardless of their socioeconomic background, their culture, their language, or any other thing that might, kind of be an obstacle in their way.
And I think as social work students adhering to the code of ethics, we have a duty to speak out against this exam. The code calls on us to work with our clients to identify their own capacity and to work to change and address their own needs. And this is similar for ourselves in a way. We have to work together to be empowered to work with entities like the NASW, who is advocating to end for this exam. We have to work with them. And I think that that's also kind of in compliance with the principle of social justice that, the statistics you gave, who is passing this exam? White people and people of color or not. It is a clear violation of social justice. And I think we as social workers, we would be remiss if we didn't bring attention to this.
I agree. And not just being this being against social justice, it's also against the anti-racist practices that we've all learned about and work to, speak out against.
Right. So in addition to just kind of connecting this to the code of ethics, we can kind of even go beyond that and talk about how this connects to anti-racist practice as a whole.
Yeah. So and just quick rundown for our listeners, anti-racist practice in social work, it goes beyond just not being racist. It involves dismantling racist structures, systems, and individual biases within our society and the social work profession. And anti-racist practice is also committed to creating, or it's supposed to be aimed at committing a fairer, more just world where all races and all ethnicities have equal opportunities. And based off everything we've discussed, the exam does not align with that at all.
No.
And it doesn't align with the beliefs of the critical race theory, which, helps us to understand how race and its intersections with other identities leads to systemic oppression. And in many ways, the exam right now is oppressing other groups of people from achieving the goal of becoming licensed clinical social workers.
Right. And I imagine it must be discouraging, as a person of color to look at these statistics and kind of not feel like there's a bit of, and in a way to say this in a way that I couldn't imagine not being discouraged by these results for the future social workers.
Yeah, I mean, me just looking at the information feels completely discouraged. And it's just like in my mind, I'm thinking, well, here comes one other thing that's just a wall in my way. And another reason why, I feel I always have to work twice as hard to be half as good as others. And that's a feeling that I'm sure many people echo. And it annoys me because it shouldn't have to be that way.
Agreed. And I think we've learned in this class and in the social work field in general is, that racism it's not just one thing that's keeping you held back. It's multiple levels. It's compounded institutional racism, and so much of what we're fighting against it's almost it's ironic that this institution itself, even though we call for combating social injustices, has plenty of examples of it in itself.
Yeah, for sure. And the way this exam has been structured, it creates unnecessary barriers that shouldn't have to be there for other people.
Exactly. And as discouraging as it is, I think that what's important is, as social work students, we're very lucky in our education that we have kind of been given some tools to work against it. And I think as students, a great option would be to join the NASW. They do have student memberships. And I think that'd be a great way to start, as we can get in touch with representatives that are on the NASW, and perhaps reaching out to them is a great way to figure out what we can do to help.
Absolutely. And just by adding our voices, we'll add to the numbers.
Exactly.
You cannot ignore that.
Exactly. I really appreciate you speaking to me on this. I think you and I both can kind of offer a different perspective, as you and I are both masters of social work students, but we come from very, different backgrounds, and we have different stories. And I think it's important that we don't let those differences stand in the way of us working together to make this exam just and fair for everyone. If we do have to keep an exam, or come up with another way to test our knowledge, that make sure that we do have competent social workers out there, but that we level
Yeah.
the playing field.
I agree. This is no way, shape, or form saying to be done with the exam entirely, but there has to be a better way that grants opportunities for everyone across all areas of life. And by you and I being able to come together and learn more about this topic, we can be agents of voices for the cause, and use this to prepare not just for ourselves, but anybody else that we know who also want to join this profession.
Exactly. And I hope that in this, we can kind of encourage change, because like I said earlier, and it probably sounds like a broken record, I probably said it 4 times, but it breaks my heart that somebody that would feel so compelled and so passionate about this field may be hesitant to join because of financial restraints, and because they just feel the cards are stacked against them. So I know that I want to work hard to try to eliminate that.
Yeah, I agree as well. And I hope not just with the association having their own prep courses that students can pay for, that they can come up with some way of discounting people. Those who've had maintained a certain GPA throughout the course of their career college career can get a certain percentage off the study exams, or if you don't pass on the first time, you can get a discount, or just something that helps alleviate the financial stress or burden that this may cause, and kind of put just a sprinkle of hope in some way. Because as you mentioned, it can be very discouraging. I mean, I feel the discouragement. However, I'm stubborn in a way. I'm not going to let that stop me. I'm going to find my way, and I hope others feel that fire burning inside of them to continue regardless of whatever obstacle they may be facing.
Right, right. And I wanted to be cautious when I was doing, when we were discussing this. I didn't want to discourage anyone any further. If anything, I wanted to light a fire under certain people, to motivate, to see, hey, listen, yeah, this is unfortunate, but there's things we can do.
Same, very, very much same with that, because I can get hearing all the numbers and hearing who gets to pass and who doesn't, it can dim that fire. But if you know that this is what you want to do, and that you have the passion and the calling for it, take this as a way to inform yourself and kind of pivot and navigate in a way that still accomplishes your end game.
Exactly, exactly. So, Adrianna, thank you so much for talking with me. This has really been a great experience. And I appreciate you talking with me.
No, I appreciate it too. Till next time.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.